The rain hit the pavement like bullets that Thursday evening in Lekki Phase 1. Kelechi stood on the doorstep of the home she'd built with her husband, cradling 3-week-old Ada against her chest, watching Tunde throw her belongings into the storm. Her laptop bag, her certificates, the small wooden box her late mother had given her. Everything landed in puddles, soaking through, ruining. "Tunde, please," Kelechi whispered, her voice breaking as thunder rolled overhead. "Ada is barely a month old. Where will we go?" Her husband, the man who'd promised forever at their traditional wedding just 2 years ago, didn't even look at her. He was scrolling through his phone, texting someone, a slight smile playing at his lips. "That's not my problem anymore, Kele. I told you. We're done. I'm marrying Dara next weekend." The name hit like a slap. Dara Olumide, daughter of Chief Olumide, CEO of Pinnacle Energy Corporation, one of the largest oil and gas conglomerates in West Africa. Kelechi had met her once at a corporate function, tall, polished, dripping in designer everything. The kind of woman who looked at people like Kelechi as if they were furniture. "You're marrying her for her father's business connections," Kelechi said quietly, finally understanding. This was never about love. You're using her to get access to Pinnacle. Tunde's eyes flashed with irritation. "Smart girl. Took you long enough." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to something cold and clinical. "My company needs Pinnacle's contracts to survive. Chief Olumide won't deal with me unless I'm family. Dara's my ticket. You?" He gestured at her dismissively. "You were always just adequate. A placeholder. Someone to cook and clean while I built my empire." Ada began to cry, her tiny wails mixing with the sound of rain. Kelechi adjusted her wrapper, trying to shield her daughter from the water already seeping through. "The money," she managed. "Tunde, I need the money from our joint account. For Ada's formula, diapers, somewhere to stay." "Already transferred it this morning," he said casually, checking his Rolex. "All 380,000 naira. I needed a new suit for the wedding. Italian silk. You understand." The world tilted. That money was everything. Her entire salary savings from her former IT job. Money she'd been setting aside for Ada's future. For emergencies exactly like this. "You stole from your own daughter?" The words came out hollow, disbelieving. "I invested in my future," Tunde corrected. "There's a difference." He pulled an envelope from his pocket, waved it briefly at her, then tossed it into a puddle near the gate. "Oh, and this came for you yesterday. Some legal nonsense from your father's family in Enugu, probably begging for money as usual. I didn't bother reading it." Kelechi watched the envelope floating in the dirty water, the ink already beginning to run. She didn't move to retrieve it. What was the point? Her father's family had abandoned her mother when she'd married outside the clan. They'd never acknowledged Kelechi's existence. Why would they contact her now? "Tunde, I'm begging you," she tried one last time, her pride dissolving in the rain. "Just let us stay tonight. Until morning. Ada needs to be dry." "Dara's moving in tomorrow," he interrupted, finally looking at her directly. "She can't see any trace of you here. It would be awkward." He gestured toward the gate. "Security will escort you out. Don't make a scene. I have a reputation to maintain in this estate." 2 security guards appeared from the gatehouse, their faces carefully neutral. They'd known Kelechi for 2 years, had watched her pregnant belly grow, had congratulated her when Ada was born. Now they wouldn't meet her eyes. "Madam, please," one of them said quietly, reaching for her remaining bag. Kelechi gathered what she could carry, her laptop bag, though the computer inside was likely ruined, a small duffel with Ada's clothes, her handbag. The rest would stay in the rain, would be destroyed. Like her marriage, like her trust. As she walked through the gate, Ada screaming against her chest, Kelechi turned back one last time. Tunde was already on his phone again, laughing at something, the light from the doorway, framing him like a portrait of cruelty. "You'll regret this," she said, not as a threat, but as a simple statement of fact. He didn't even hear her. The gate closed with a metallic clang that echoed through the empty street. Kelechi stood in the rain for a long moment, trying to think. No family, her mother had died 3 years ago. Her father's people had never claimed her. No friends close enough to show up at 11 p.m. with a newborn. Her former colleagues from the tech company had scattered after she'd resigned during pregnancy. She started walking, no destination in mind, just moving because standing still meant drowning. Ada's cries had weakened to exhausted whimpers. The rain showed no signs of stopping. 2 blocks away, she passed the gate where Tunde had thrown her things. The envelope he'd tossed was still there, now completely submerged. Something made her stop. Her mother's voice, maybe, from somewhere beyond, telling her to check, to look. Kelechi set down her bags, scooped Ada closer with one arm, and reached into the filthy water. The envelope came apart in her hands, the paper disintegrating, but she could still make out fragments of words printed on expensive letterhead. Obi Holdings Limited, sole surviving heir, estate valued at. And then, impossibly, cutting through the smudged ink and running water, a number that made her heart stop. N2.8 billion. 2.8 billion naira. Behind her, lightning split the sky, illuminating the Lekki mansions, the luxury cars, the life Tunde thought he was building. Ahead, darkness and rain and uncertainty. But in her hands, dissolving and real and absolutely life-changing, was proof that everything had just shifted. Kelechi looked down at Ada, who had finally stopped crying, her dark eyes watching her mother with infant wisdom. "It's going to be okay, baby girl," Kelechi whispered, her voice steady for the first time that night. "Mama's going to make sure of it." She walked into the storm, carrying her daughter and the remains of an envelope that contained her future, leaving behind the man who'd just made the most expensive mistake of his life. The law firm of Adeleke and Associates occupied the entire 20th floor of a glass tower in Victoria Island. Kelechi sat in the reception area 3 days later, Ada sleeping peacefully in a baby carrier strapped to her chest, and tried not to think about the 72 hours that had brought her here. The nights in a budget hotel in Yaba, the formula she'd rationed to make it last, the moment she'd pieced together enough of the destroyed letter to find a phone number. Mrs. Okonkwo, a woman in her 50s, elegant in traditional Iro and Buba, emerged from the inner office. "I'm Barrister Ngozi Adeleke. Please, come in." The office was all dark wood and leather, law books lining the walls, logos sprawling below through floor-to-ceiling windows. Barrister Adeleke gestured to a chair, her expression carefully professional, but Kelechi caught the flicker of assessment in her eyes. She knew what the lawyer saw, a young woman in a faded dress, carrying a newborn, probably desperate, probably hoping for something that wasn't real. "I received the letter," Kelechi began, her voice steadier than she felt. "About my father, about Obi Holdings." Barrister Adeleke opened a folder, her demeanor shifting slightly. "Miss Obi, may I call you Kelechi? Your father, Chief Emeka Obi, passed away 6 weeks ago. Heart attack. Very sudden." She paused, her voice gentling. "I understand you didn't know him." "My mother told me he had another family," Kelechi said quietly, "that he'd chosen them. She never spoke about him after I turned 5. "Chief Obi never married," the barrister said, watching Kelechi's reaction carefully. "He had relationships, yes, but no other children. He spent the last decade of his life searching for you and your mother. When he found out your mother had passed 3 years ago, and that you existed, he restructured everything, his entire estate. Obi Holdings Limited, the real estate portfolio, the investment accounts, the offshore holdings. Everything goes to you, his only child, his heir." The words hung in the air like something fragile and impossible. "How much?" Kelechi whispered. 2.8 billion naira, give or take, depending on current valuations. Obi Holdings itself is a diversified conglomerate: real estate development, hospitality, import-export logistics, technology investments. Your father built an empire over 40 years, and he left it all to you." Barrister Adeleke slid a document across the desk. "This is the certificate of ownership." As of his death, you became the majority shareholder and CEO of OB Holdings Limited. Kelechi stared at the paper. Her name, her father's company. Numbers that didn't make sense to someone who'd been rationing baby formula 3 days ago. There's one more thing, the barrister continued, pulling out another folder. Your father left a sealed letter. For you specifically. He asked that it only be opened by you, in private. The envelope was heavy, expensive paper, her name written in careful handwriting she'd never seen before. Kelechi tucked it into her bag, unable to process it yet. Not here, not with everything else crashing down around her. I'll need to schedule meetings with the board of directors, Barrister Adeleke was saying, pulling out her phone. They're aware of the ownership transfer, but they'll want to meet you, discuss the transition, understand your vision for the company. I need something else first, Kelechi interrupted, her mind already 3 steps ahead, already calculating. I need complete privacy, a secure location, and I need access to OB Holdings Technology Division, specifically the cybersecurity department. The barrister's eyebrows rose slightly. May I ask why? Kelechi met her gaze directly, and something shifted in her expression, something that had been hidden beneath years of playing small, of being adequate, of letting Tunde underestimate her at every turn. My husband doesn't know who I really am, she said quietly. Before Ada, before marriage, I was lead cybersecurity architect at TechCore Systems. I built intrusion detection systems for 3 of the largest banks in Nigeria. I can break into any corporate network in this country and walk out without leaving a trace. She paused, her voice hardening. And I'm going to use every resource my father left me to dismantle the man who threw his daughter into the rain. Barrister Adeleke was silent for a long moment, studying Kelechi with new eyes. Then, slowly, she smiled sharp and approving. Your father would have liked you, she said. He was ruthless in business, absolutely ruthless. She picked up her phone. I'll have our technology division cleared for your private use, whatever you need. The secure room in OB Holdings Technology Hub was everything Kelechi needed, isolated, soundproofed, equipped with servers that hummed with quiet power. She'd set up Ada's portable crib in the corner, the baby sleeping peacefully while her mother worked. It took Kelechi 6 hours to breach Tunde's company network. His firm, Apex Consulting Group, was laughably underprotected basic firewalls, outdated encryption, the kind of security that assumed no one sophisticated would bother attacking. He'd always been arrogant about technology, had dismissed Kelechi's expertise as nerd stuff, while she'd been building systems that protected billions. Now she sat in front of 3 monitors, looking at everything: his email, his financial records, his client contracts, his private messages with Dara, full of calculations about her father's company, about access, about using her for corporate advancement. And there, buried in a folder marked contingency, she found it the secret that would end him. Tunde's entire consulting business was a house of cards. He'd been falsifying audit reports for mid-tier companies, helping them hide financial problems to secure loans they couldn't afford. It was fraud on a massive scale, touching dozens of businesses, hundreds of millions in false certifications. One whispered to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, and Tunde would spend the next decade in Kirikiri maximum security prison. But Kelechi didn't want him in prison. That was too quick, too clean. She wanted him destroyed the way he'd destroyed her publicly, completely, with everyone watching. She pulled up Tunde's corporate structure. Apex Consulting Group was privately held, but struggling. He'd been hemorrhaging clients, desperately needed Pinnacle Energy's contract to survive. The wedding to Dara was scheduled for Saturday, 5 days away, at the Echo Hotel's Grand Ballroom. 500 guests, live band, champagne fountain, all the Lagos elite, watching Tunde marry into the Olumide dynasty. Kelechi opened a new window and began typing, her fingers flying across the keyboard with the muscle memory of someone who'd built systems like this before. She drafted the acquisition papers. Had OB Holdings' legal team structure the corporate takeover, used her father's offshore investment accounts to quietly purchase Apex's debt from 3 different banks. By dawn, she owned every liability Tunde had, every loan, every obligation, which meant, legally, she owned leverage over everything he'd built. But she needed one more piece, the final move that would make the destruction complete and public and absolutely irreversible. She picked up her phone and called Barrister Adeleke. "I need an invitation to the Olumide Okonkwo wedding," Kelechi said, "and I need to look like someone Chief Olumide would respect, someone powerful, someone who belongs in that room." There was a smile in the lawyer's voice when she responded, "I'll have our image consultants meet you tomorrow. And Kelechi, your father kept a penthouse in Ikoyi, top floor of Azure Towers. It's yours now. Perhaps it's time you and Ada moved into a home worthy of the Obi name." After the call ended, Kelechi sat in the quiet hum of the server room, Ada sleeping peacefully behind her, and finally opened her father's letter. The handwriting was shaky, written by a dying man who knew his time was short. Asterisk, Kelechi, my daughter, I have no right to your forgiveness, but I leave you this empire in hopes you'll be stronger than I was. Your mother was the only woman I ever truly loved, and my cowardice in choosing social expectations over her is my life's greatest regret. You inherited her brilliance and, I hope, my ruthlessness in business. Use both. Never let anyone underestimate you. Never let anyone make you small. You are an Obi. Act like it. Your father, who loved you from a distance, Emeka." Kelechi folded the letter carefully and placed it back in her bag. Then she turned back to her monitors, to the digital architecture of Tunde's destruction, and continued building the trap that would close around him in 5 days, in front of everyone he'd ever wanted to impress. The rain had stopped outside. Lagos gleamed in the early morning light, unaware that its social order was about to shift dramatically. Ada stirred in her crib, making soft baby sounds. Kelechi stood, lifted her daughter into her arms, and walked to the window overlooking the city. "You're going to grow up knowing your worth, baby girl," she whispered against Ada's soft hair. "You're going to grow up watching your mama take back everything that was stolen from us. And you're never, ever going to settle for a man who makes you small." Saturday couldn't come fast enough. The Eco Hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into something from a fever dream of excess. White roses cascaded from 20-foot ceiling installations. Ice sculptures of swans guarded the champagne fountain. A live band played high-life covers, while 500 of Lagos's elite mingled in their finest Aso Ebi and designer Agbada, their jewelry catching the light from crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than most people's houses. Tunde stood at the center of it all, resplendent in ivory-embroidered Agbada, receiving congratulations like a king accepting tribute. Dara hung on his arm in a gold-beaded wedding gown that had reportedly cost 12 million naira, her smile perfect and practiced, a woman who'd been groomed for exactly this kind of performance since childhood. "My son-in-law," Chief Olumide boomed, his voice carrying across the ballroom as he clapped Tunde on the shoulder. "Welcome to the family. We'll discuss the Pinnacle contracts on Monday. I'm thinking we start you with the Port Harcourt logistics account, 50 million naira to start. See how you handle it." Tunde's eyes gleamed with triumph. This was it. Everything he'd calculated, every move he'd made, culminating in this moment. Access to Pinnacle Energy's massive contract portfolio. Social elevation into the Olumide dynasty. His struggling consulting firm about to be flooded with the kind of opportunities that built generational wealth. Across the room, near the entrance, a ripple of attention began to spread through the crowd. Whispers, heads turning. The band faltered slightly before recovering. She entered like a force of nature, wrapped in silk and certainty. Kelechi wore a custom emerald green Ankara gown that hugged her post-pregnancy figure perfectly. The fabric hand-dyed with the Obi family crest, woven subtly into the pattern. Her hair, which Tunde had only ever seen in practical ponytails, was styled in an elegant updo adorned with gold accessories. Diamond earrings, real ones, estate pieces from her father's collection caught the light. Professional makeup highlighted features that had always been beautiful, but that she'd learned to downplay. to make herself less threatening, less noticeable. She looked like what she was, a billionaire CEO who'd decided to attend a party. Barrister Adeleke walked beside her, along with two men in sharp suits, OB Holdings CFO and head of corporate acquisitions. Behind them, a videographer with professional equipment, because Kelechi had learned from her father's notes that power moves meant nothing if they weren't documented. "Who is that?" someone whispered near the champagne fountain. "Is that Kelechi Obi? From OB Holdings?" "I heard Chief Emeka left everything to a secret daughter. She's worth billions, they say." The whispers built like a wave, crashing toward the center of the ballroom where Tunde stood frozen, his champagne glass halfway to his lips, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and then something close to horror. Kelechi walked directly to him, her heels clicking against marble, the crowd parting automatically to let her through. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough that he could see she was really there, really standing in front of him in his moment of triumph, turning it into something else entirely. "Hello, Tunde," she said, her voice carrying in the sudden quiet. The band had stopped playing. "Kele?" His voice came out strangled. How did you get in?" She smiled, and it was nothing like the soft expressions he remembered. "I was invited." Well, technically, OB Holdings was invited as a major corporate sponsor. The Illumide family does extensive business with my company. We've partnered on 3 major real estate developments in the last 5 years alone. She turned to Chief Illumide, extending her hand. "Chief, thank you for the invitation. My father always spoke highly of your business acumen." Chief Illumide, to his credit, recovered quickly from his surprise. He shook her hand, his politician's smile firmly in place. "Miss Obi, what an honor. I was sorry to hear about your father's passing. Chief Emeka was a giant in Nigerian business." "He taught me well," Kelechi said smoothly. Then she turned back to Tunde, her expression shifting to something colder. "I came to deliver a wedding gift, something I think the whole room should hear." Tunde's face had gone pale beneath his foundation. Dara was looking between them, confusion creasing her perfect makeup. "Tunde, who is this woman?" "His wife," Kelechi said simply. "Well, legally separated as of yesterday, but still, we share a daughter, Ada. She's 1 month old." "You met her briefly, Tunde, right before you threw us both into the rain." Gasps rippled through the crowd, phones appeared, recording, because this was Lagos, and scandal was currency. "That's not," Tunde started, but Kelechi raised her hand. "I'm not here to discuss our personal history," she said, her voice cutting through his protests. "I'm here on business." She gestured to her CFO, who stepped forward with a leather folder. As of 9 a.m. this morning, OB Holdings Limited completed the acquisition of Apex Consulting Group. We purchased all outstanding debts, assumed all liabilities, and executed a controlling interest takeover. The folder opened. Documents appeared on nearby screens, the hotel's presentation system, which Kelechi's team had accessed an hour earlier, purchase agreements, debt transfers, corporate filings with the Corporate Affairs Commission. "What this means," Kelechi continued, her voice steady and clear, "is that I now own Apex Consulting Group, 100%, every asset, every contract, every employee." She paused, letting it sink in, including its CEO. Tunde's champagne glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble floor. No one moved to clean it up. "You can't, that's not," he stammered, his voice rising. "I can, and I did. It's all legal. Barrister Adeleke can confirm." Kelechi's lawyer nodded, her expression professionally neutral. "Now, as the new owner of Apex, I'm making some immediate operational changes." She pulled out her phone, scrolled briefly, then looked up. "Effective immediately, Tunde Adekunle. You are terminated from Apex Consulting Group. No severance. Your company email and building access have been revoked. Security will collect your office contents next week." The ballroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Dara's hand flew to her mouth. Chief Illumide's expression had gone carefully blank, the look of a man rapidly recalculating social and business alliances. Dara Olumide Adekunle. Kelechi continued, turning to the bride. You were listed as senior consultant on Apex's payroll as of last week, despite having no consulting experience or relevant credentials. I'm afraid that was just your husband's attempt to legitimize your position before securing your father's contracts. You're also terminated. Dara's face crumpled. Daddy. Furthermore, Kelechi said, her voice rising slightly to carry to every corner of the silent ballroom. I forwarded evidence of Apex's fraudulent audit practices to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. They'll be opening an investigation into falsified financial reports for at least 17 companies. Tunde, you should probably get a very good lawyer. Actually, you should probably get several. Tunde lunged forward, rage overtaking shock. You can't do this! I'll sue you! You'll do nothing, Kelechi said quietly, and something in her voice stopped him cold. Because I have every email you ever sent, every document you ever falsified, every calculation you made about using Dara for her father's money. I have everything, Tunde. And unlike you, I kept copies. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. 500 guests stood frozen, watching the impossible reversal of fortune playing out in real time. Then, from the back of the crowd, an older voice cut through the tension. Tunde Matthew Adekunle. Everyone turned. An elderly man in traditional Agbada pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with fury. Tunde's father. Chief Adekunle Sr., a retired civil servant who'd scraped together his life savings for his son's wedding dowry. Papa, Tunde started, but his father raised his hand. You told me this girl's father was a billionaire. You told me this marriage would elevate our family. You took my 3 million naira for the dowry. His voice shook with rage and betrayal. Now I find out you already had a wife? A child? And you've lost your business? He turned to Chief Olumide. I demand the dowry money back. Every kobo. My son has shamed both our families. Before Chief Olumide could respond, Mrs. Olumide, in her elegant gilet and aso-oke, stepped forward, her face streaked with tears, and her expression thunderous. Dara made a small, broken sound. Mommy? We're taking you home, Dara's mother said, her voice tight. Right now, this marriage is annulled. You will not be tied to this fraud. She glared at Tunde with pure contempt. Our lawyers will handle everything. Chief Olumide's careful political mask finally cracked. He turned to Tunde, and his voice was ice. You will never do business in Lagos again. I'll make sure of it. Kelechi watched it all unfold. The father demanding money. The in-laws retrieving their daughter. Tunde, standing alone in his expensive wedding agbada, as his entire world collapsed around him in front of everyone who mattered. She felt Ada's soft breathing against her chest. She'd brought her daughter in a carrier, hidden beneath her elegant gown. Evidence, witness, future. Goodbye, Tunde, Kelechi said quietly, though her words carried in the broken silence. I hope Italian silk was worth it. She turned and walked out of the ballroom, her team following, leaving behind a man who'd calculated everything except the possibility that the woman he'd discarded might be worth more than everything he'd ever dreamed of having. The footage went viral within hours. Someone had live-streamed the entire confrontation, and by midnight, every blog in Lagos had picked it up. Billionaire heiress destroys ex-husband at his own wedding. The most expensive mistake in Nigerian history. From rags to riches. How Kelechi Obi got her revenge. The videos racked up millions of views, the comment sections exploding with reactions that ranged from shock to savage satisfaction. Tunde sat alone in the now empty ballroom at 3 a.m., still in his wedding agbada, surrounded by wilting roses and half-empty champagne glasses. The hotel staff had stopped trying to get him to leave an hour ago. He stared at his phone, watching his life disintegrate in real time across every social media platform. His business email had been deactivated. His company website now displayed under new management Obi Holdings. His professional network connections were disappearing one by one as people scrambled to distance themselves from the scandal. Former clients were issuing statements terminating contracts, His accountant had sent an emergency message about frozen accounts and pending EFCC investigations. But worse than all of that were the personal messages flooding in. His father had sent a single text. "You are no longer my son. Do not come to the family house. Do not use the TYCOON'S name. You have disgraced us beyond redemption." Dara's parents had served annulment papers through their lawyers within 2 hours of leaving the reception. The documents were brutal in their efficiency, the marriage voided, the dowry return demanded with interest, a restraining order preventing Tunde from contacting Dara or any member of the Olumide family. Chief Olumide had followed up with a personal message that simply read, "I will destroy any business you attempt to build in this country. You played with the wrong family." His phone buzzed again. His landlord, the Lekki house, the one he'd thrown Kelechi out of, was actually owned by Apex Consulting Group as a corporate property, which meant Obi Holdings now owned it. He had 30 days to vacate. Tunde scrolled through his bank accounts with shaking hands. The 380,000 naira he'd stolen from Kelechi, spent on the wedding suit, on flowers, on impressing people who now wouldn't return his calls. His personal savings had been wiped out by wedding expenses he'd fronted, expecting Chief Olumide to reimburse him as a wedding gift. That reimbursement would never come. He had 14,000 naira to his name, less than the cost of one bottle of the champagne that now sat warm and flat on abandoned tables around him. His phone lit up again. A video call from his mother in Ibadan. He almost didn't answer, but maternal obligation was coded too deep to ignore completely. Her face appeared on screen, and Tunde immediately saw she'd been crying. Behind her, he could see relatives gathering, their expressions ranging from pity to barely concealed satisfaction at his downfall. "Tunde," his mother said, her voice heavy with disappointment, "your father has banned you from the family. The elders met tonight. They say you have brought shame that will take generations to repair. Your younger brother," her voice broke, "his engagement was called off this evening. The girl's family says they cannot marry into a family of frauds and liars." The words hit like physical blows. His brother, innocent, paying for Tunde's choices. "Mama, I can fix this," he started, but she shook her head. "How, Tunde? How do you fix this? You had a wife, a baby daughter. You threw them into the rain like garbage. For what? Money? Status?" Her eyes hardened. "Your father sold his Land Rover to raise dowry money for you. He was so proud. He told everyone his son was marrying into the Olumide dynasty. Now he cannot show his face at the club. His friends mock him. His enemies celebrate." "I didn't know about the inheritance," Tunde tried to explain, his voice desperate. "That is not the point." His mother's voice rose, years of gentle patience finally breaking. "Even if Kelechi had nothing, even if she was exactly as poor as you thought, you threw your wife and newborn baby into the street. What kind of man does that? I raised you better than this. Your father and I sacrificed everything for your education, and this is what you do with it?" She wiped her eyes roughly. "Do not call this number again. Do not come to Ibadan. Your father says if you appear at the family compound, he will have the security turn you away. You are on your own now, Tunde. May God have mercy on your soul, because your family no longer will." The screen went dark. Tunde sat in the silence of the destroyed ballroom, his expensive wedding agbada suddenly feeling like a costume, like something ridiculous and pathetic. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see Lagos waking up the sunrise, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, the city moving forward into Saturday morning, indifferent to his destruction. His phone buzzed one more time. An email from EFCC. "Notice of investigation, Apex Consulting Group financial fraud. You are required to appear for questioning Monday, June 2nd, 9 a.m. Failure to appear will result in arrest warrant." He thought about Kelechi as he'd last seen her walking out of the ballroom in emerald green silk, her head high, her daughter strapped to her chest. Every inch the powerful woman he'd never bothered to see when she was his wife. He'd looked at her every day for 2 years and seen only adequate, placeholder, someone to use until something better came along. He'd never asked about her work, never questioned why a woman with her education and skills had been content with a basic IT job, never wondered what she'd been capable of before she'd made herself small to fit into his vision of what a wife should be. She'd told him he'd regret it. Standing in the rain, soaked and broken, holding their newborn daughter, she'd said it like a prophecy, and he'd been too arrogant to listen. His phone lit up with a news alert. OB Holdings announces major corporate restructuring. Former Apex Consulting clients welcomed to new ethics-focused service division. Kelechi wasn't just destroying him. She was building something better from the ruins, offering his former clients a cleaner alternative, positioning herself as the ethical choice in Lagos Consulting. She was erasing him from the industry entirely. Tunde finally stood, his legs unsteady, his wedding agbada wrinkled and stained with champagne from when someone had bumped him during the chaos. Hotel security was approaching now, polite but firm, ready to escort him out. He walked through the ballroom one last time, past the elaborate decorations that had cost hundreds of thousands, past the untouched wedding cake, past the ice sculpture swans now melted into abstract shapes. At the entrance, he saw one last thing, a small photo that had fallen from someone's bag during the evacuation. It was Kelechi and Ada from the hospital, taken the day after Ada's birth. Kelechi looked exhausted but radiant, cradling their daughter with infinite gentleness. Tunde remembered that day. He'd stayed for 20 minutes, taken one awkward photo, then left to handle urgent business calls. He'd missed his daughter's first full day of life because a client meeting seemed more important. He picked up the photo and stared at it for a long moment, at the family he'd had and destroyed, at the woman who'd loved him enough to make herself smaller so he could feel bigger, at the daughter who would grow up knowing her father had valued Italian silk more than her existence. Then he placed the photo carefully on the gift table, walked out of the Echo Hotel into the brutal honesty of Saturday morning sunlight, and began the long walk toward a future that held nothing but consequences. Behind him, the ballroom staff began cleaning up the debris of the most expensive wedding reception in Lagos history, the one that had ended not with celebration, but with the complete and total destruction of a man who'd mistaken cruelty for strategy and poverty for worthlessness. Across town, in a penthouse in Azure Towers, Kelechi stood on her balcony with Ada in her arms, watching the same sunrise paint Lagos in gold. Her father's letter was framed on the wall behind her. Her company was thriving. Her daughter was healthy and safe. And somewhere in the city below, a man who'd once thrown them both into the rain was learning the difference between what you take and what you earn, between who people appear to be and who they actually are when you push them past breaking. Justice, Kelechi had learned, wasn't always swift, but when it finally arrived, witnessed by everyone who mattered, documented for posterity, absolute in its completeness, it was worth the wait. Do you think Kelechi was too ruthless? Don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and tell us what you think in the comments below.